Aries, hi, just in time for your Aries June 2020 reading. Glad to see you. Hi to my subscribers. Always good to see you. Now this month I'm going to use the tarot. I'm going to use the tarot deck known as the Thoth Tarot. And I like that because it's got a lot of imagery in it. I might even use a pen to point out some of the imagery that's in it. And look, a lot of people have been asking me questions about myself, and so I thought I might give you some background as well. And there's a lot of questions, and I'll get to some of them in just a sec. In fact, why don't I get to it now and see what they have to say? There's a question of, no, I'm not going to answer that. How about this one? When did you become clairvoyant? Well, I was born clairvoyant. In fact, I thought everybody was clairvoyant when I was growing up. I just knew things. And I grew up on a beach, a surf beach. For those of you in Britain and perhaps other countries, you may know of a soap opera called Home and Away. Well, that beach that features in that soap opera Home and Away is where I grew up surfing. And gave me a great degree of fitness, which I kept throughout the rest of my life, or in fact it set me up for the rest of my life to stay fit. There's the sun, good for you. And I was taken under the wing of a woman when I was at university who developed my spiritual gifts, I suppose, because they are gifts. She was much older than I am. I suppose I call her a wise woman, you might call her a witch. And she let me go and find out about how she did things. And that was very successful. There's the Empress. Do you know, but what really, where it really took off for me, I mean, I'd always done readings for people when I was a student, but really when it took off for me, I suppose, was in the early 90s, about 28 years ago, when my beloved woman with whom I was in love died suddenly. I won't go into the details of how that happened, other than to say the sun went out and the birds stopped singing. And about 6 months later, I was feeling very sorry for myself and crying, and I went into a trance, I suppose you'd say. There's the Aeon. And look, during that period, it was as if very dark sunglasses that I had worn my entire life were lifted, and I could see everything, and everything made sense. And since that time, I really have very truly day-to-day lived in 1 foot here and 1 foot in the other realms, which has been good because it has allowed me to do, there's the Eight of Swords, to do healing and of course readings for people. Do I work? No, I don't have a day job. I do this, I do healing and spiritual work. I have, and this has been the case for well over 20 years, well, from the late 90s really. And the thing is that it has allowed me to develop the gifts, and they are gifts of the spirit. For those of you who are interested, there's a Christian New Testament book called the 1 Corinthians chapter 12 that talks all about it, and it says that these things are given by God. Well, I have been able to act as the instrument of the Spirit and provide healing to people, certainly the spiritual healing, and very often healing of the body, where it's within the plan for it to be healed. So where something has happened to someone when it's not supposed to have happened in the grand scheme of things, I suppose you'd say. But other than that, there it is. So I do this alone. Tell me about your children. I don't like to say much about my children other than to say that I am a father and I have more than one child. There's the Princess of Wands. Well, enough about me. How about we now talk about you and what is in store for you in this month of June? All right, Aries, let's have a look at this first card here for you, which speaks of abundance, prosperity, and creative regeneration. Now, there are a couple of interesting things that point themselves out to me here. Here in the middle of this depiction of, I suppose, the sun is a very many-petaled lotus. Now, this to me seems to be teamed with this symbol down here, which is a biblical Hebrew letter, which is Reish, which means the head. Now, in the head are the higher chakra centers and the revelation of the 1,000-petaled lotus on initiation, on spiritual initiation, can have the brightness of the sun, if you have achieved that in mysticism. So specifically, the Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew association is the revelation of the inner light in the head centers that illuminates your spiritual path. Now, you have an outer sun expressed through your personality, such as Aries in your case, and an inner sun, the light of God, which is meditated upon. Now, astrologically, and astrology, as you know, is very important in my readings, this card is closely associated with the sun for obvious reasons, and with the Egyptian deities or sun gods, Ra in particular. I think what's also interesting here is that we see quite another lot of interesting symbology in the card itself. We have a male child with red wings and a female child with yellow wings. Her wings symbolize air, his symbolize fire, and they are in the shape of butterfly wings, which speaks of freedom of the soul. And you notice that, well, I don't know, their legs are crossed. There's another card in the tarot which has crossed legs in it, and that is the Hanged Man, but his hands aren't free. In this case, the hands of the children are both free. So this signifies their evolution and emancipation from the restrictions traditionally associated with that Hanged Man tarot card. They dance in the light. And when we meditate on the spiritual light and sound within, we become childlike and are reborn. Now, there is a red and yellow wall around this mound here, this green mound, and that signifies the integration of the qualities of the twins in harmony. What's also interesting here are, you look at this thing, there are 12 rays emanating out from where those petals are. Well, or from the solar disk. Now, those 12 rays energize the zodiac signs which surround them and energize the universe itself. So here you have a ring of zodiac signs around the thing itself. Now, there are also shorter rays which are contained in between these larger rays, and you'll see it divides each section into 3. Well, they are the 3 decans of each sign: 0 to 10 degrees, 10 degrees to 20 degrees, and 20 degrees to 30 degrees. Now, in your case, here's you, the ram. Your overlord, I suppose, your governing sign is that of Mars, or planet is that of Mars. In the first decan, the sub-planet is also of Mars, so very Aries-like in character. The second decan of Aries is governed by the sun, and so you have Mars and then the sun as the sub-planet, and so you'll have a lot of Leo characteristics. And with the third, there is Jupiter in the third decan of Aries, which means that you're liable to have a lot of Sagittarius influence to you. Now, the rainbow effect around the zodiac signs themselves, and let's just point this out, you can see there's sort of variations of color, and the greens and the reds and indigos and blues and things. That indicates the presence of water. And water in Greek mythology is connected to the raising of consciousness. Now, in Christian tradition, you might recall that John the Baptist baptized in water. Now, the green mound here refers to fertility in your life, and it is the foundation of growth and abundance, and biblically, these symbolize heightened spiritual states, and that is what is implied here. Let me see, is there anything else that's of interest to it? Anything else that could be of interest to it? Well, I think what we might turn to is there are a number of things, but they'll take us down the foxholes of esoteric mysticism, which we'll look at another time. And what I think we can say here is that the sun is the source of life and represents success and abundance, and this will follow you in your life at the present time. This energy is also what will get you through tough times and will help you succeed. You're also in a position where you can share your qualities with others. Be confident in who you are and what you stand for. The sun is illuminating your path ahead and will give you the energy to move forward after what has, I think, been something of a trying time, maybe to do with your health, and as a consequence of that, your finances. But embrace your goals now and give it everything you've got. If you have been having a difficult time, the sun brings you the message that things are going to get better, and you'll find the strength and positivity to get through this period. You know that the rain clouds will soon give way to the rays of the sun, and you will feel warmed to the soul once again. Do you know, this card, I think also, looking at these children here, this also implies simplicity with the depiction of these twins. This means that looking for the simple things in life can bring you immense happiness just by following your inner child and not allowing the layers of negativity that you have possibly built up over the years come to dominate you. When the sun shines, you find new ways of resolving problems, new perspectives and fresh viewpoints. You see things more clearly and are able to objectively consider obstacles and difficulties. You now have the energy you need to throw yourself into life and to dynamically deal with life's situations. I want to have a look at this card which is sitting underneath it, which is a sword card, and in this case it is the Eight of Swords. What an interesting looking card it is. Two long straight swords cross six shorter crooked swords, or more accurately knives, I suppose. Now, three of them, these bottom three, point to the left and the top three point to the right, and they have something of a luminous type of appearance, don't they? And if we look at the background here, well, it really looks chaotic, doesn't it? Now, there are a couple of angels which are associated with this card in consciousness. Bel, which is learning the unknown through the known. Yeah. And Hel, which is knowledge rediscovered. And mysticism can also come to you at this time. Now, the astrology, as I mentioned, is very important for me in reading these cards. The astrology for me are like icons on a computer screen. For example, I might press the word icon on a Windows PC, and yet it is not the icon that is the program. Similarly, it is not the planet. The planet is representative of all the spiritual energy which is beneath it for me. And here I see Jupiter ruling the first decan of Gemini. Now, Jupiter in Gemini, well, Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, And to get into Gemini, it's at the completely diametrically opposed side of the zodiac wheel, and so it needs to travel 180 degrees away, the furthest away from its natural home, to get into Gemini, and it will therefore be in detriment, and its beneficent powers can be considered to be hampered in some respect. And the inquisitive nature of Gemini inhibits the growth and expansion of Jupiter. Now, this implies that you may not feel that you can do or grow as you want just at the moment, and that growth and will is the Jupiter aspect, and that is because that hampering, that handbrake, is probably due to too many distractions, which is a Gemini aspect, which may or may not be self-created. But nevertheless, Jupiter does bring good fortune, because Jupiter is the planet of good luck. Now, I'm looking also at these two swords that are at the front here, and this can indicate to me that you can have a choice between two courses of action, or just the inability to find the best course of action to take at the moment. These swords are, and going from the top down to the bottom, there is a kris, which is an Indonesian sort of knife. Then there is the kukri, which is a Nepalese knife, a scramasax, which is a medieval sword, a dagger. Well, we're all familiar with daggers from ancient cultures, all ancient cultures to the present. Second last is a machete, which is Latin American. And here we have a yatagan, which is a Turkish short sword. But this chaotic background here means interference, I think. I think what we can say is that it's possible that you will be having something of a hard time deciding over which is the best option for you to take at the moment. The swords are all different, and so are the things which are getting in the way of your next course of action. Now, it is also possible that you could be having analysis paralysis or overthinking things, with a lot of things going through your mind, or your willpower to move forward becomes scattered on endless unproductive thoughts. Well, a solution to this is, I think, to take time out and just do something different. Get a distance from the situation, as the energy you are putting into it is just perpetuating this indecision. So the optimism of Jupiter can then shine through once you leave things alone for a while and let them settle down in their own way, with Jupiter bringing expansion, bringing good luck and good fortune into it. So have some fun and come back to this in a refreshed life. Yeah, these are the most important swords, I think, these two at the front, and these other ones seem in a way to be unimportant, so it could be that you are, well, spending a lot of attention on things which, arguably are really not all that important. Let's have a look at this card here, which is the Aeon. Now, this is interesting, isn't it? You never really see this card much, do you? Here's the Aeon. Well, this is really moving away. I suppose in the Rider-Waite deck, the Judgment might be the equivalent card to this, but this really moves away from the Christian theme in that Rider-Waite deck. There are a couple of figures here, being Nuit, the star goddess, and Horus, which are referred to in a religion called Thelema, which many people haven't heard of, but it did gain some popularity in Western mysticism, over the last 150 years or thereabouts. It's not something I subscribe to myself, but each to their own. I think what I can say about this, though, is again, I'm looking at this one religious association I can bring into it, with confidence and with good reason, is this letter down here. Now, you see the way that's shaped? Well, look at this thing here. That's shaped in the same way. And this is the biblical letter called Shin, which means tooth, and that letter shin is the mother letter of fire. This symbol down here, incidentally, is the esoteric symbol for fire. Now, there are three figures kneeling within this big letter here, this shin letter. There's a father, there's a mother, and then there's a child, which is much brighter than those. And I think what this is saying is that in an Aeon, there is a changing coming about. There has something been born which is brighter than that from which it was spawned. There is, I think, also an astrological connection with Libra here, because we can see an arch around here, which is the color which I associate with Venus, as is this one here. And so there is a sense that there is a connection between this card and that of justice, or in this particular card it would be, in this particular deck it would be adjustment. And what I get is a lot of karma, a lot of karmic reward coming your way from here, a lot of karmic reward. These orange figures here, or not figures, but this orange color everywhere here, they are also representative of fire. Fire is important as it is the initiator of change. Now, fire is also a key stage on the spiritual path, which is the same regardless of what the time is, or what the Aeon is, or what the century is, or what have you. Although the overall consciousness of people may be unique to particular times. But fire is very important because that is the impact of the divinity. And I'm reminded by that Christian New Testament scripture called the Gospel according to Matthew, which in I'm pretty sure it was chapter 3, verse 11, had John the Baptist, who we mentioned before, say, "I indeed baptize you with water unto repentance, but he that comes after me is mightier than I am, and his shoes I am not worthy to bear. He shall baptize you with the Holy Ghost and with fire." Yeah, fire. Bringing the divinity. So when you see fire, certainly at least in the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, you can be assured that there's a reference there to God being the divine spirit. Usually when you see water as well, you can assume it's to do with matter. Now this star goddess that you can see in outline here, standing in front of this creature, Horus, she forms this dark archway that's in the form of, well, it's in the form of the 24th and final letter of the Greek alphabet called Omega. And this is described biblically in the Christian book of Revelation, which says in chapter 22, verse 13, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end." So we've got this spiral of stars and some snakes around, and in particular coming onto her third eye, which is particularly important for letting the spirit into us. Now, what we can say here is that I think that this is talking very much for you of a decision which is going to have a major impact on your life. Now, examples of this can include lifestyle changes, career changes, relationship changes. But with these two cards here, being this Empress, which I'll get to next probably, and the Sun, these changes are going to be very good for you. They're very positive. When I've seen this sort of a spread like this before, well, with this in the middle of these two, I have seen clients who have had really life-changing spiritual experiences. One of them had a near-death experience. In any event, there's going to be something which is going to have a major impact on your life, and it's going to force a change in perspective and almost a birth of a new self. And here's this baby which is being born here, but this is something which is better. It's a time to move on from a situation after seeing the bigger picture of things. So I think you'll have endings and new beginnings. I think taking time out to review your life timeline and seeing what changes have happened over time and how you have grown and reviewing the bigger picture, it's a natural period of growth where you are experiencing a deepening in your understanding of yourself and in the world around you, a time of deep change, reflection, and evolution of your spiritual awareness. You may also be letting go of friends and structures which no longer serve you. Let's have a look at the Empress. Now, this is a very interesting set of symbology here. The Empress, well, she's a woman in the world who gives forth milk for the infant, whilst the cosmic Empress nurtures the universe with the milk of spiritual life and light. We can see her acting in both the microcosm and the macrocosm. Now, in the East, in India and Hinduism, we might refer to her as Parvati, the wife of Lord Shiva. And Parvati was the goddess of, or is the goddess of beauty, fertility, of marriage, and of spiritual power and enlightenment. And if I'm not mistaken, and the Indian audience might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the Puranas refer to Parvati also as being the sister of Vishnu, who's one of the third member of the Hindu Trinity. In any event, here we have a lot of interesting sort of, well, symbology that's coming through here. The first thing that I'll say is that here is, again, because, incidentally, here is the glyph for Venus, and very much is the case that she is associated with Venus, at least in this position. That's the case. I don't have a difficulty with that. Sometimes I do, but I don't with this case. Here is a Hebrew letter again. This is Dorleth, which means door. And she is the door where all souls are sent out and then return. And so she is one of birth and death. The door refers to the space between the state of unity in the divinity and then into the manifested states, which are in space and time, which are associated with duality, polarity, and division, and which are removed from that unity within the divinity. If you can imagine her, she's almost like a glass prism, and the unified white light of the divinity hits her door, and then the rainbow colors split out. You have division, and then going the other way, the various colors come back this way, and they are reabsorbed back into the divinity, into oneness. So astrologically, I see this Empress as being with Venus, as I noted above. Now, some other interesting things here. She has this crown upon her head. Now, this is similar to the crown of Isis in ancient Egyptian religion, of a waxing moon, a full moon, and a waning moon. There is a globe on the top of it there, and then there's a Maltese cross sitting on the top, which refers to fire, air, earth, and water. And she sits between two waxing and waning moons. She faces this waxing moon, which represents growth, fertility, and love, as compared to the waning moon, which is associated with letting go of things. Now, both these moons are revolving, and you might see the outline of a circumference around here, each of them. They're revolving, which to me actually indicates the balance of opposites in nature. Now, the uprights of her throne, let's have a look at them. Here they are here. This is the doorway, incidentally, behind here, that she is that she is part of, that she is the door, this Daleth, the door. But the uprights of her throne here, they're sort of twisted and fluid-like, representing her femininity and fluidity like water. Now up here there's a little sparrow, and here is a dove, and they are closely associated with Venus, because in the plant kingdom, the myrtle, rose, apple, and poppy, among others, were sacred to Venus, and in the animal world, the sparrow and the dove, as well as the swan and the swallow, happened to be sacred to her. So the colours of her dress are rose and green. They are the colours of Venus, which is her astrological attribution. Now she has bees on her dress, and these bees, for me, really talk about her energy and vitality, and that sort of bee mixture of wax and bee saliva. What do they call that? Propolis or something? It's a supplement. It can be used as a supplement that people eat, and it's also good for the skin and fighting infections, for example. I think what's also of importance here is that she has a belt here with the sign of the zodiac signs on there. Yeah, so it represents her universality in all the signs, and hence all of creation. Love unites all of spirituality, and it's also a symbol of her physical attraction. And here there is the blue lotus of Isis. Remember, she had the crown of Isis up here. Well, this is the blue lotus of Isis in her right hand, and she's holding that over her heart chakra. This symbolizes universal love and is to be found and expressed through the wellspring of the heart. The spiritual path is of the heart and not of the head. And the blue color of it is, well, it's a symbol of water, which is her element, fertility and creativity. Yes, and I notice her arms here, they're held out in a way that one might hold a baby, aren't they? Yeah, really, really much the case. Now there's a couple of little fish down here. They also represent the feminine principle. And here is a mother, or stylized pelican, a mother pelican with her offspring. And in medieval times it was thought that the mother fed her baby pelicans with blood that she had pecked from her own heart, again bringing in this very much maternal in particular, but also paternal sense which is coming around this card. So I think what we can say here is that you may well be finding that because it is so maternal, I think you may hear something of a birth or a pregnancy during this period. I think you will be very fertile, so be careful if you don't want what comes from the acts of union that mix well with fertility to produce offspring. I think this is talking of you also being in touch with the beauty of your life, and it can express someone needing nurturing, you know. It describes an empathetic and caring personality, someone who's in touch with the universal love or spirit, and reminding you that spirituality is expressed from the heart. Nurturing others and those around you is what I also see. That then takes us to the lovely Princess of Wands, and let's have a look at her. Well, the Princess of Wands represents the earthly part of fire. Now, according to elemental dignity rules, fire and earth strengthen each other, but are neutral. There is in this card an element of her nakedness, giving her body, earth, a combustible relationship with fire. So I think that this implies that the person represented by this could well be someone who is really quite combustible and have a reactive personality. Now, if I was to say who it was, I'd say that you are liable to be looking at someone who could well be a Leo or a Virgo or a Cancer around in your life here. I think that is the case. She is inflamed. She's turning her back on the mundane and doing with her passions and what inspires her. She's holding this wand with the sun at the top of it, and it's got, well, it looks like it's got about 30 rays on it. This wand, therefore, represents her energy, vitality, and enthusiasm. Now, as I say, she is naked. Actually, I'll tell you an interesting story. About 40 years ago or so, and it may still be the case, this card was banned from being in US prisons, male prisons, because of the nature of the young woman who was depicted on it. Nevertheless, she is naked, but that shows that she is not afraid to fully express herself. Now, there's no earth in this card, really, so there's... so she's in the image, so she's giving herself up to the flame. So she's a very fiery character, and she can sometimes lack grounding. I've got to say, she can lack grounding. Now, there's a tiger there, which she's holding by the tail. Now, the tiger is historically known to be a fearful animal, but she has tamed this, and it signifies her courage and lack of fear. Now, there are 5 roses, 5 roses on this altar, and they are the 5 senses which are fueled by the fire. Now, the altar itself, well, it's gold of the sun. Now, Aries, there are 2 rows of ram's heads here, and they go around the back as well, upright and upside down. So 1 inverted, 1 upright with 12 in each row, so 3 times 4. And these represent the equal length of day and night of the spring equinox. And her crown, and these 2 big things here, are of ostrich feathers, which are from the ancient Egyptian goddess called Ma'at, and which is about justice. So she has a sense of justice, albeit of her own unique kind, and she can therefore be quite vengeful and cruel when she feels that she has been wronged. Now, let me see where it's sitting, and I can see what it's going to say for you. This is a person who is confident, daring, exciting, freedom-loving, nonconformist, impulsive, and ambitious. People love her character and energy. She can also be, as I say, very vengeful, temperamental, unruly, possibly at times shallow and cruel. But I think that this card means you overcoming old fears and patterns, and that's represented by the tiger, and setting yourself free from them. You have brought them to the surface and conquered them. Although I have to say, I think this means that you have often learnt your lessons the hard way. I think what this is also the case, and it doesn't matter whether you are gay or straight, I think this is a time when you will be very attractive to other people in a physical sense. That's the way it is for you this month.
Well, you were fantastic in that reading, as you always are. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did providing it to you. Do you know, I love doing these readings for you, and I'm glad that you get so much out of it. Now, make sure to check out the description if you'd like to have a personal reading, and just let me say this. You are a legend, and I look forward to seeing you again next month. But until then, it's bye for now.